Hey guys, I'm here with I'm sorry, you're gonna have to pronounce it as well. She's an ISTP, and I also have Henry in my face right now because Henry, as you can see, just got neutered. And he's a little bit needy. So go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody.
Hi, I'm a YouTuber and I'm using the name Hatshepsut or Jatshepsut, which is just an Egyptian queen. I just picked it kind of randomly, but I'm not really sure what to say to introduce myself. Yeah, I just do videos about what I'm thinking about, or just because I feel like it's good to be able to practice talking, because I've always been very introverted, so I guess that's kind of why I'm on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean that I know what it feels like, especially because like on YouTube, you're not only just talking to people. Sorry guys that the sun's in my face. I'm doing in the dark. I'm going in the light. But yeah, it's difficult as an introvert to put yourself out there and then also receive criticism or just like, you know, those kind of things. But I commend anybody that does it because it's difficult. So I think it's awesome that you're doing that. So I guess we'll just get into it. Again, sorry I'm so bright. How would you describe yourself as a child, as a teenager, and as a young adult? Like how you have changed and some of the things that maybe happened to you or how you acted, that will give people a better idea of you.
It's kind of hard to answer this question without any more guidance than just like tell me about your life. But
okay, maybe so just maybe let's start off with like what were you like as a young child? Like what were you interested in, and what what would the people around you, how would the people around you describe you?
When I was very young, people, when they first saw me, I don't remember this very well, but my mom tells me about it. When they would see me, they would think I was like this really, really sweet little girl, you know, because I looked, I had curly hair and everything like that, you know, and I'd smile, you know, sometimes, but I had a very strong will, so I would get into fights with my parents all the time when I was younger. And I mean, everyone does when they're young, but they would last for like hours.
Oh my gosh.
Like over 6 hours, sometimes like an entire day. We would just be fighting all day long, and I would not do anything that they wanted me to do. So, and I was also very serious, and I didn't like other people like touching me. Like, I would be all nice, and then someone would come up, even when I was just like a baby, and someone would try and be like, "Oh, you're so sweet," and they'd try and touch me, and then I just like freeze.
Little
so,
did you know.
Yeah, so that's when I was very young. But then I kind of got to a point where I've always been kind of introspective, I guess. And I don't remember how old I was, but I kind of decided that I didn't want to feel anything. Because, you know, I'd get angry at my parents or whatever, and I would be very, I don't want to say physically violent because I wouldn't attack people, but I would, like, be throwing myself on the ground and kicking and stuff like that. And obviously, people would say that was, they would try and teach me not to do that. They would be like, that's not good, you know what I mean? And so I kind of, and also I would be afraid of things. I was afraid of dogs, you know, because I felt like they were going to bite me or whatever.
Oh, sorry. Henry's not gonna bite you.
Well, even little dogs, you know, I just was afraid of dogs, you know, and I felt like that was very I don't know, very useless to have these feelings, you know what I mean? No one else liked them. I didn't really like them. And so I kind of decided to not feel anything at one point in my life. And it kind of worked, honestly. It's really strange looking back on it, but I didn't really feel a lot for a while. I mean, if you think about things like fear, if you think about it long enough, you can always think of a reason not to feel it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still not afraid of dogs anymore. I'm not really afraid of many things. Not because I don't think they're going to bite me or anything. Like, I'm not afraid of horses and they could kill you and stuff like that. But it's just that I don't really. The worst that they can do is not bad enough for me to care. You know what I mean? So whenever I would feel something like something bad happened or someone treated me unfairly, I always hated being treated unfairly, you know. But again, there was nothing I felt like I could do about it at the time, and so that was another useless emotion. You know what I mean? Why feel like you're being treated unfairly if you can't change it? You know. So and then there were other things. I don't know how is there anything that you don't want? I mean, I've watched some of your other interviews, so I know that you don't mind people talking about, you know, difficult things, I guess. But I don't know how much pathos you want in this, but
No, at least for me, I don't know about people watching, but I don't really care. I guess. I mean, I do, but whatever you feel comfortable talking about, and I think, I think it's very interesting. Sometimes the harder moments in our lives reveal truths. So if you feel comfortable talking about something, don't feel afraid. And I mean, the worst that could happen is we delete this
yeah,
video and maybe like 15 people see it, at this point. So it's just
yeah.
up to you.
I just have a problem with oversharing sometimes. I'm not very good at telling what I should say and what I shouldn't say, you know what I mean? Um so yeah, so I was around that same time, I think. I'm pretty sure it was around that time, but I don't think they were really connected. I don't Obviously I don't know, but I don't think they were connected, you know, not deciding not to feel and this other thing, but I was sexually abused in a sense by someone, you know, it's usually not by someone who's just some random stranger. It was someone who's in my my immediate group, I suppose. And it wasn't like serious. Like most of the time, it was more harassment, you know. And I was very young at the time, so it was just more confusing than anything else. You know what I mean? So, and I think it's kind of weird to say this, but I feel like the way that the adults in the situation, what they did actually at the time was more made me more dysfunctional than anything else, if that makes any sense, because I was very confused about it, and nobody really wants to talk about things like that, you know. And so I got a lot of weird ideas about stuff like that, you know what I mean? And especially, the only reason I brought this up, though, is because, especially when I was younger, I was, I don't know if you've heard of selective mutism.
I think so.
And I've not been diagnosed with this, but
Oh yeah, I completely heard something different, but yes, I have.
yeah.
Where
So basically,
you decide to just be quiet.
well, people think that they decide to just be quiet, but it doesn't really feel that way when you're
Okay.
experiencing it. It's basically where someone speaks normally in certain situations, but then they do not speak in other situations, whatever those situations might be. Sometimes it's like if they go to school, they won't speak. They're at home, then they will speak. I didn't actually. I was homeschooled, so I didn't have that like dichotomy or anything like that. But I had problems with like speaking and also just vocalizing in general. Like when I was young, even when I was angry, I wouldn't really scream. I would just be very physical, but I wouldn't scream. And if I was scared, I would never scream. I can't remember any point in my life that I've ever actually screamed. So I'm very non-vocal in a sense, you know. And people would kind of not blame me for being so non-vocal, but they would try and encourage me to be more vocal, which and then they would expect me to do it. You know what I mean? So if I was being sexually harassed or whatever, they'd be like, "Well, just shout for someone to help you or whatever." You know what I mean? Which was impossible. You know what I mean? So it felt very. I felt at that point I kind of like decided that I was a very dysfunctional person. um, so that's kind of like looking back on my childhood. I always felt like I was very dysfunctional, and most of the things I would think about is trying to figure out how to make myself a better person, if that makes any sense. Um, um, yeah, I kind of lost my place here. What am I talking about?
You're talking about how well, you just said that you kind of saw yourself as a dysfunctional person, and you were talking about how there are times that you couldn't vocalize things even if you wanted to, like when someone was trying to, sexually harass you or something, you couldn't, people were saying, "Oh, just call for help," but you couldn't, you just physically couldn't. And so when do you think, or has it changed to the extent that you're able to kind of be more vocal about things, or what kind of changed after that point?
Well, growing up over time, just getting more mature, I kind of learned more about, the fact that I understood more about sexual abuse when I got older, just because I found out about it myself and stuff like that. And so it wasn't as confusing to me, which if something's confusing, that's kind of like, I spend a lot of time thinking about it, but if I kind of understand, then it's easier to just kind of forget about it. But, so that was okay. And then, I think to this day, I'm still selectively mute. I think a lot of people who were selectively mute as children actually still are to some extent, but because they're older, they're able to control their own surroundings more, and so it just doesn't affect them as much.
Yeah.
Um, so And that's one reason why I've been doing YouTube, just because I need to practice using my voice, you know what I mean? Because I don't talk a lot in real life, especially. So, and it actually has been helping. Like, if I'm trying to discuss something, I think one thing that helped was that I was homeschooled and I didn't have to like talk to teachers in order to learn things. I just taught myself. I don't know what it's called. There's a word for it that someone used just a few days ago and I forgot what it was. But you just basically teach yourself everything, and that worked for me. I didn't have to discuss things with teachers or argue with teachers or stuff like that, which would have been impossible, really. And now, I do have a teacher figure where I'm trying to learn something, and I have a really hard time communicating in that situation. So it's still there, but it's just easier to deal with, I guess. It's normalized, and you figure out ways to still live your life, you know. So yeah, that's what I think of when I think of my childhood, is just being really, really quiet. I would be by myself a lot. But I mean, I'd spend time with other people, especially if friends of ours that we knew pretty well, they would come over and we'd go outside and play. And I really enjoyed that because I saw them a lot, so they were pretty close friends, you know what I mean? I didn't really like strangers, though. So we would sword fight with sticks and climb trees and do all that kind of stuff and play two-hand touch football because I was a girl and I wasn't allowed to play tackle football. But yeah, so, and we didn't have any animals, but I enjoyed being around animals. Like our neighbor had some goats, and so I'd sit next to the fence and for hours and just sit there next to the goats. Yeah, so it's just quiet. That's the main thing, just being by myself and thinking a lot.
So, when was the moment that you discovered that you were an ISTP?
We had a book about MBTI that I think my dad bought at some point, and so I read it, and it had these little, it had the talking about, are you more introverted or extroverted, and the different, what do you call them, the continuums, not continuums, but they also had a section where they had descriptions of all the different types. And so basically I just went through it and was like, oh, I guess I'm an ISTP. Because that one made a lot of sense for me. And that's, and that was all I knew about MBTI until fairly recently.
That's interesting. It's interesting to hear people and the ways that they kind of got into MBTI or typology. So, as you've kind of learned more about not only just your personality, but other people's personality, how do you think maybe your mindset has changed, or what have you kind of learned from that?
Sorry, I think okay. I forgot the first part of your question. What were we?
So,
what
kind of things did you kind of learn about other people and yourself after kind of looking into MBTI more recently?
I guess it's been just finding out about strengths and weaknesses, and acknowledging that you do have strengths and weaknesses, and just understanding the mind better, and understanding what things are dysfunctional and what things are just, normal. Or I mean, it's kind of like I know people are like, you shouldn't be limited by your personality type, and you should work on your polar and everything like that, which is true. But at the same time, it's kind of like, if you find out that you have something, that you have a polar function, and that's the reason why you behave certain ways, I mean, it's kind of like easier to accept, I guess. It's easier to just kind of, instead of thinking that you have to change everything about yourself, you kind of have a structure to work off of. And understanding other people also, instead of you can have better informed opinions about what other people are doing and why they're doing what they're doing, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what's really helpful, is like kind of discovering the differences between yourself and other people, and kind of how they, you know, why they do the things they do. What would you say was one of the best moments in your life?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really think of moments. I mean, I don't. This is a weird way of saying it, but I don't really judge moments, if that makes any sense. I don't know. I mean, I could tell you if I enjoyed being around certain people, and then I would enjoy being around them, but I don't think there's any specific time that I would be like, well, that's the best moment, I guess. It's kind of a hard question for me to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I think for a lot of people, that's a hard question to answer, because, you know, I don't know if I have one particular moment either. But what are the things, like, outside of MBTI and like writing and stuff? What are some things that you're really interested in?
Sorry, I missed the part of your question again. Something about writing, or?
I mean, you can talk about writing, but what are certain things that you're interested in?
I don't know. I spend time working on computers a lot, I guess. And I enjoy writing. I enjoy studying. I studied plant biology for a while, and I studied engineering for a while. Yeah, I can't really think of any like major interests. I just kind of do whatever.
If you could be anywhere in the world right now, where would you go and why?
Permanently or just temporarily?
You can do permanently and temporarily, which maybe those are going to be different for you.
If I could go somewhere right now temporarily, I'd go visit my family. Because I'm.
I think that your audio isn't working.
Is it not?
Okay, it's working now. Okay, yeah, I heard with your family, and then after that I didn't hear anything.
Okay, so I just said that if I could be somewhere temporarily for a while, I would go and visit my extended family, because I haven't seen them for a long time. And if I could move somewhere permanently, I would move to a desert.
Why?
I don't know. I don't like being cold.
I don't like being cold either, but I don't want to move to a desert. Well, I guess California is a desert, so.
No, not California.
I'm just kidding. But I'm just saying, like, California is a desert, but yeah. But when I think of somewhere to live, I don't think of a desert. That's funny. Which desert in particular?
I don't know. I couldn't decide. Just whatever happened, I guess.
Um, so I guess kind of on the same lines, if you were a time traveler, where would you travel to and why? Either in the future or the past. Like,
I've never thought about this before. Might take a second.
that's okay. Let me see if there's any questions in here. I think a lot of people are just talking about different things. If you guys have any questions at any point, please let us know. So.
I think I would go back to Russia to some point during the revolution before when Russia was being turned socialist or communist. I can't remember what they call themselves. When they took down the monarchy.
Wasn't that like 19, can't think of, it was like early teen, it was like the teens, 19 something, 1918, I don't know when the Soviet revolution was, but that's a very interesting time period for sure.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of confusion about it. I'd be interested to actually know what happened.
I can't think of the film that I watched, but maybe it was earlier than that actually. But I watched this film with my friend Chaz in our class, or whatever class. I forget what that his class was called. But it was, we watched something about the Soviet Revolution that was like, I think produced in like the 20s or something, maybe earlier. I don't know. It was really interesting. There was so much that happened, so much turmoil. It would be really interesting to see. And I also find the story about the Romanovs very interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very interesting time period. I want to look up when the Soviet revolution was, because I want to make sure. So I think, okay, yeah, it was 1917. So I was kind of close, but that's cool. Let's see. Oh, MJ wanted to know why your username is the way it is.
Jatshepsut?
Yeah.
No reason.
You said that it was an Egyptian queen, did you say?
Yeah. It's a
So that's interesting.
The first influential Egyptian queen that we know of.
Wow. I did not know that. That's really awesome. Let's see. So, so far we've been talking for 30 minutes, which really doesn't seem like it's been that long, but I think I want to try to cap it at like 45 minutes. I'm trying to scale back.
Yeah, I watched you talking about that.
Yeah. What would you say is a misconception about ISTPs that you wish people would kind of get past?
I don't actually know about many misconceptions people have about ISTPs, honestly, because, I mean, all I knew about it was the book I read when I was younger, and now nobody really talked about ISTPs, so not that I've been in, so I don't know.
It's interesting. Um,
I guess the closest I'd come to knowing what misconceptions people have is when people would say that I'm not an ISTP because of whatever. Uh, like, as people say, INTP because I don't have enough SE. Which I feel like it's so weird when people say that you're something else because you don't have enough of whatever, but they still don't give you any reason why you have the other thing. I mean, you have even less of that, but you know.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess FE and my extrovert functions don't really come out in my videos a lot just because nobody's there. I'm not really interacting with it, and I'm usually really, really tired, so I don't know.
I mean, I think you have a I think you have a way of displaying your extroverted feeling. And actually, it's interesting that you talk about how you talked about um, yourself as a child, besides like the horrific things that happened to you. The fact that when you talked about the way you would kind of fight with your parents and stuff, and how you kind of physically displayed yourself. My cousin, who's 9 now, you know, way before I ever saw your videos, but like I typed her as ISTP. I mean, I'm not 100% about it, but I feel pretty good about it. And what's very interesting to me is she also will have kind of tantrums like that as well. And she also it's interesting because you guys almost look similar in a way. Not like exactly physically, but the ways your eyes are set. Um, like you look very different in like you're not like necessarily the same physically, but it's the eyes that look very similar, which is really interesting because I
Hmm.
don't see eyes like yours or like my cousins all the time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you guys share a lot of things in common with the way that you acted when you were a child.
Mhm.
Um, I would say actually one of the misconceptions that people have about ISTPs is they see ISTPs as like unemotional, which obviously you kind of stepped into that role for different reasons, but I actually think that ISTPs are like the opposite, the positive opposites of like ENFJs. And
Yeah.
ENFJs are known for being like very emotional, very dramatic, but I actually find even like other ISTPs that I've known in the past, I get along really well with ISTPs, but I also find them to be some of the most dramatic people I've ever met in my life. So I don't know if you can relate to that.
Maybe. Yeah, I guess. I know when I'm talking to my family or whatever, if I get angry, everyone is really like, I don't know, they act really weird about it. And I don't even yell or anything like that. I don't know what's wrong, but yeah, they don't really like it when I get angry.
I think ISTPs are very intense, like very, very intense about things.
Yeah, I
Um,
would say so in my experience.
have you looked into like socionics at all?
Um, a little.
Okay. I would definitely look into it because I think you're going to find some insights about not only your type, but like the quadra that you would be in. I personally believe, and it doesn't always transfer over, and I'm trying to not like, even though I do say that you should be able to transfer it over, I know that there are cases where people are mistyped in MBTI, so it really doesn't. But for you, I personally think that you would be considered an ISTJ in Socionics, which would make sense because introverted thinking, your primary function is a judging function.
Yep.
So actually what Auto Alchemy just wrote, introverted sensing, thinking, perceiving, is actually very, even though that's how they see it in MBTI, that is very misleading because ISTPs are not perceivers, they're judgers. So
yeah, I think the reason why people can call introverted judgers and perceivers is because their extrovert function is perceiving, and so they might come across as perceiving in some ways. Like people will be like, "What do you want to do?" and I'll just be like, "I don't really care." I mean, it doesn't. I'm fine, you know what I mean? So I kind of come across as being very relaxed in some ways, I guess. So
yeah, I think what also comes across, and partly why I believe, I was actually talking to someone last night about this, but partly why I believe that MBTI uses the extroverted function instead of the primary function like it does in Socionics is so like the introverts, if we're talking about like an ISTP or like an INFp and Myers-Briggs, whatever that looks like, those people, so like an INFp and Myers-Briggs is especially their outward self. So like when they go out in public, they can maybe seem a little bit more unorganized or messy, seemingly messy, whatever it is. Or even like maybe they're not as timely for certain things, whereas maybe an INFJ and Myers-Briggs may seem a lot more put together and maybe more so cognizant of like time and stuff. So that's why like I think, you know, MBTI uses the J, like the secondary function, the first extroverted function as the determining factor for J or P, because outwardly introverts can look different than what their primary function is. And at work or at school, where that's where the MBTI test was mostly used for, well, especially in the beginning, it wasn't meant to study the cognitive functions like Socionics. It was meant for how do you fit into this role in school or work. So it's very interesting, but it's just very misleading to like understanding the cognitive functions. But yeah. So, but the reason I say this too is like we would, if you are like ISTJ and Socionics, you would fall into the beta quadra. I'm also in the beta quadra. I'm an IEI or INFp in Socionics, which is where the beta quadra is considered the most dramatic quadra out of all of the quadras.
yeah.
We we stir the pot because we're also with ESTPs and ENFJs. So, but let's see if we have any questions for other people. I mean, other people have asked. Do you guys have any specific questions for her? What you guys think or want to know? Maybe something about her? We'll let people kind of get into that because it's a little bit lagged. What would you say is what do you want to do in the future? Like, what is your dream job, or like what are some of the things you want to do?
I don't know, actually. People always want me to decide, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
How old are
All
you
the
by
jobs I've done, it just kind of came up, and then I decided I wanted to do it. That's just kind of how I decide what I'm going to do.
They just pop up.
Yeah.
How old are you again? I don't know if I've ever asked you this.
22.
22. Oh, you have time. I mean, even though you're not like too much younger than me, like 22 is kind of a time where you're really trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
I don't know about the Taylor Swift song, but 22 wasn't necessarily my favorite year of life. But, yeah. Oh, the chopper said she looks younger. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get like, for example, I'm wearing like mascara and like I filled in my eyebrows, but when I don't do that, when I don't wear makeup, people think I'm like 14.
Yeah, people have told me I look 14 very recently. And I never wear makeup, and I never really do my hair, and I wear like hoodies and stuff, and I think that's a lot of what causes that perception. And I'm fine with that. I don't really care. I like hanging out with teenagers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not, well, I think younger teenagers, but like, I mean, when I was 22, back in the day, I had teenage friends as well, just because like when you're in college, people, um, like obviously like freshmen or people that are just starting out are like 18, 19. So the chopper said, I must be bad at telling age because if I didn't know, I thought you would be like 20. The chopper, I'm 25. So, yeah. I yeah, not 20. Not 20 anymore. That was a long time ago. I'm just kidding. um, okay. So, what kind of do you listen to music?
Yes, I do actually.
What's your favorite
I
kind of
didn't
music?
used to. I don't really have much of a favorite kind of music. Just someone will mention something and I listen to it, and yeah, that's about it. I have an iPod, and I have music on it. A lot of it is like I have like one thing by Mahler, which is classical, and I have Queen on it, and I'm just trying to remember. I don't know. I have a bunch of random stuff on there. I don't know.
So, I don't know if you want to answer this, but why I'm not gonna say it just because like I don't know. Um, but why do you live where you live right now?
Um, like, why did I move here, or
Yeah.
why do I live with my family, or what?
Why did you guys move here? Move where you from?
Um, well, my dad is an INTP, and so he just was kind of like, I'm just gonna pick where I want to live, and then he picked here, and we moved.
Wait, when did you guys move?
About 10 years ago or 11 years ago.
Okay, so you've mostly lived, well, not mostly. Where did you originally live?
Washington State.
Okay.
United States.
Oh, where in Washington?
Um, Down near the Oregon border, near Vancouver, or yeah, about around Vancouver. Yeah,
Vancouver, Washington.
yeah, Vancouver, Washington area. The,
I
the
know
Columbia
that.
Gorge area,
What was that?
Columbia Gorge around there.
That's crazy. Because I know exactly where that is. I've driven through there a couple of times. Well, actually, more than a couple of times. But yeah, because I don't know if you knew this, but I actually lived in Washington from August 2017 to, annoying. August 2017 to June 1st of 2018.
Yeah, Michelle lived there too. It's kind of funny. It's just weird how many people have lived in Washington. I've met a lot of people who live there.
It is weird because like when I was growing up, I always saw Washington as like this random state that I would forget about.
Yeah.
But obviously Seattle's there and stuff. Did you ever go to Seattle or Portland?
Yeah, we'd go there
That's
pretty
awesome.
often. Part of my family has been there for a long time. Like my grandparents live on the same place that they've lived for since my mom was like 6 or something. They've been in the exact same place. But my dad was actually from California, Death Valley, and his dad was a miner and moved up from there. And my grandmother, on my mom's side, is Finnish actually,
Wow.
and her her relatives went straight to Washington, so that she has like Washington heritage, I guess.
Wow. That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the chopper said, as an English person, I am confused right now. I think it's because we're talking about Washington. Okay,
Yeah.
so what you probably hear like on whatever news network you're listening to, the BBC, whatever it is, or if you watch like an American news network or whatever, you're gonna hear Washington, and they're probably referring to Washington D.C. So like when we say like when they say like, oh, back in Washington, it's probably Washington D.C., which is not technically a state. It's in between Maryland and Virginia, I believe.
Yeah, I think they call it district or something like
Yeah,
that. It's not really a state.
yeah. So that's where the capital of the U.S. is. Washington, the state, is on the other side of the country, basically diagonal. It's the well, not the northernmost.
Between California and Canada.
Yes,
Well,
and
between Oregon and Canada, but California, everyone knows.
yeah, and then a little far away towards the west, but it doesn't seem like it on a map. Alaska is there, so.
Mm-hmm.
But so I can see how that's confusing. Yes. Yeah, Washington is a state and Washington D.C. isn't. Yes, Queen Tiger. But again, you're probably on when you hear about like people talking about Washington, they're probably talking about Washington D.C. rather than Washington State. Oh my gosh. Auto alchemy. What is Maryland? What is Maryland? Jeffrey, you know what a Maryland is, and I don't want to talk about that state. But let's see. What special about Washington? Lawyer's desk or business buildings? Are you talking about DC or the state? Um, Washington, D.C. is pretty awesome, and Washington State is pretty awesome, but there's a lot of trees and it's cold and it rains, and Seattle's there. So,
Yep.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, Queen Tiger knows what she's talking about. Oh my gosh. How many sides does an Oregon have? Okay. Well, on that note, do we have any final questions? Before we end this stream. Also, I mean, you don't have to. I understand that I'm putting you on the spot, but do you have any questions for me as we start concluding?
Well, I guess since you're one of the only persons that people I've spoken to that actually knows anything about personality type, do you think I'm an ISTP? Because I know some people feel
I personally do. I personally do. But again, I would look, and we can actually talk, like anytime you want to talk, we can talk outside of this. As you know, I'm going to be gone from all social media, including email, whatever, in the month of February.
Mm-hmm.
But especially March or even like leading up to February, if you want to talk about things privately, we can talk about different things. And also, I just really would say look into Socionics, because Socionics, you're going to unwrap like a Pandora's box of.
Yeah, I just started looking at it fairly recently. I know some of the basics. Like, it's hard to say how much I know and how much I don't, but I feel like I don't know anything. But yeah.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I feel like I don't know anything either. But well, I do. I feel like I do know, but I also need to go back into it and really get into it. I'm actually starting to read, really get into Carl Jung's Psychological Types, his book. So that's going to be really interesting and helpful. So, yeah. Oh, Benny Hem said, I love the fireplace, pucokie. Oh, Queen Tiger, yes. Also, pucokie, I had to look into Socionics, finally, to figure out my type. It's Socionics, it's like a double-edged sword for everybody, even like for you. Typically people get into Myers-Briggs and they mistype, because Myers-Briggs is a very flawed system. Personally, I've said this before, but I wish we could completely do away with Myers-Briggs, because I think it's actually, it's basically a hit or miss kind of thing. But Socionics is so challenging, and there's so many things and so many, like, it's very intense. So like for people that are just getting into typology, it can be very difficult to just jump into Socionics.
Yeah, the first time I saw anything about Socionics too, it was just really weird. Like, I don't know, maybe I got the wrong website or whatever, but I looked at it and I went to my profile or whatever, and it had this weird description of this Russian guy, and I couldn't figure out what it was supposed to be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, bear in mind, a lot of these things are not, a lot of these descriptions were made by non-English speakers, or, it's kind of,
yeah, I know, but it was just like they were saying the ISTP is this person, and then they did this like profile, like describing what it looked like and what his job was and all this kind of stuff, and it was just really weird to me.
Yeah, it is weird. They use someone like as their archetype, like or like the person that
figured it out.
Yeah, it's different. It's very, very different. But yeah, so it's like a double-edged sword, because what I would, in a perfect world, people would just get into Socionics and then they would find out what their type is, but that's not the case, because Socionics isn't something that like you ever taught about like in school or like at work. You're not like your boss isn't like, all right, let's spend a whole month learning this system and then we're gonna take it and then we're gonna figure out what your type is.
Yeah.
Like, that's not really the case. They'll be like, let's take this MBTI test and figure out what your type is. And again, there's a high likelihood that someone will mistype. And then, so my recommendation for anybody that's into typology and really wants to get a deeper understanding of typology is to kind of throw everything you know about typology out the window. And that sounds bad, but like you kind of want to go into Socionics, or just like considering what your type is by just not having any misconceptions, because there could be a chance that you've mistyped in Myers-Briggs. So it's better to go into something blindly, or like kind of not blindly, but going into something where you're just like intentionally throwing things away, rather to go into something trying to fit into a certain type and then be mistyped in both systems. So I personally think you are typed correctly, but I could be wrong. So I would even say for you to consider as many things. But yeah.
Yep.
So, well, I guess we went over the 45-minute mark, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, someone just mentioned the typing with facial expressions. I was typed that way, and they said I was ISFP.
Yeah. I love Calypso and Alex. I think, INTJ and INFp coffee have a lot of things that are very valuable. And I think that they have, sometimes they are correct in their assertions of people, but I personally would not only use micro expressions to type someone, nor do I think that that's the way to get the most accurate result. Because the thing is, from my understanding, and I could be wrong, I don't want to bash their system or something. I personally would not feel comfortable typing someone after a short interaction with someone, even if it was like a 30-minute or 1 hour long video. Personally, I would feel a lot more comfortable being with someone in person, seeing them in person, because there's a lot of nonverbal communication. Also, guys, sorry, this is random, but Henry is like, can you see Henry at the fireplace?
Yeah.
He's so cute. I just think there's a lot more to it than just micro expressions. I think you can learn a lot from that.
I think part of the fault may be that facial expressions and body language in some cases is also affected by brain function apart from personality. So like someone with autism might have atypical body language or facial expressions and stuff like that, and that wouldn't necessarily have an effect on what their personality is. So you can, and even disorders like you could have like a derealization disorder, and that might cause you to have different kinds of body language interactions or facial expression interactions, and that wouldn't, it's not completely dependent on what your personality is, even if your personality can contribute somewhat to how you behave or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. But I think it was interesting that they weren't so off, ISFP is pretty, like, it's still on the NISE axis. Yeah. So so they weren't
completely. Is different.
Yes. To me, you do not strike me as an ISFP. And this isn't because of stereotypes or stuff like that. It's just like, it's a difference. And actually, I do think ISFPs and ISTPs have a similar look to them in their eyes. Again, it's not a physical trait necessarily, but it's the way their eyes are set. Like, for example, my mom, who's an ISFP, has kind of a similar look, but it's different. And also, my not so nice roommate that I used to have is also an ISFP, and she has a similar look to my mom. So in her eyes, not physically, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think there is something there, but I would not. I guess I shouldn't say what I'm gonna say. Actually. Yeah, because I know that it is helpful for some people. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. I wish it was more accurate. I just don't think it is necessarily accurate in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish it were more accurate, as in I wish that there was something like that would be more just based on like something you could look at and just decide whether you thought what their personality was. And I wish there was something like that. Maybe there is, just no one knows it yet, but yeah.
Yeah. I think there are in some ways, like you'll even see this in Socionics. I know there's another system that uses this, but I do not agree with that system whatsoever, basically. That I'm not going to name. I've named it before. I think we can kind of figure out a system that has many more personalities than what the Myers-Briggs or Socionics system has. But in Socionics, they do have physical representations of the types, and there is a similarity between the types. But it's something that I think you can't really necessarily get across online. What I would think would be really awesome is to be able to meet with people one-on-one in person and really get a full view of people to be more like, I don't know, feel like more confident in typing people, because I wouldn't want to charge money to type someone that I'm only seeing a video of.
Yeah. I'm actually interested in an idea for typing people where you would create a informational type database, which you could include like pictures of the people or clips of them speaking or body language and stuff like that. But I was thinking mainly of just describing their minds personally, writing a description of how they think or their actions and stuff. And then you create a database of these different things. And if someone wanted to type themselves accurately, then they could just spend hours reading it all and then, like, well, this is what makes sense to me. You know what I mean? I mean, it wouldn't be like the easiest method, but I feel like it could be accurate as long as you actually pick people who you had definitely verified were of a particular type in order to add them to your database.
Yeah, no, I thought about that as well. It's just so hard. I mean, Myers-Briggs is already so messed up in many ways that that it's just.
You kind of want to start new in some ways.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. Benny Hem said that he loves that you have lovely eyes, lovely blue eyes.
Aww.
But yeah, so I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, evening, morning, wherever you are. And this has been amazing, and you guys should definitely check out our channel. I have it linked below, and subscribe, because I think, you know, it's also encouraging for you to have people give you. Henry, seriously? Really? Come here. Poopsel. Mr. Poopy. All right. Henry's. Yeah, so I think, you know, more positivity around the MBTI community will be great. You agree? You agree? Just bark at the haters. Bark at the haters. Because really, I think we really want to, I just really want to have like constructive criticism in this community without the like negativity. Especially like for people like you that are just starting off, you know. So everybody, I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.
Bye.